Commission Board of Adjustment for Tuesday, September 12th at 7 p.m. To kick it off, David, will you please conduct the roll call?
Ayers.
Here.
Brisbane.
Here.
Tice. Zierden.
Here.
And Weaver.
Here. All right, all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item, we're going to have an approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve?
I will make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Next item is the open forum. If you are in attendance and would like to speak on something that is not currently part of the agenda, please approach the podium, state your name and address. All right, we're going to go ahead and close the open forum and move on to approval of the August 8th, 2023 regular Planning Commission adjustment meeting minutes. Do we have any changes or a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion has passed. And moving on to the council liaison report, David Chansky is going to do us the honor of giving us that recap.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Councilmember Jensen is traveling, so he's not able to be here tonight. So I decided to just do it real quick for him. Long meeting, very, very quick recap. Majority of the meeting was related to the preliminary 2024 budget. So if you wanted to get any details about that budget, I would just recommend the video for that council meeting is on our YouTube page. So that can be either found going directly to YouTube, searching City of Breezy Point, or through the city's website. Very detailed presentation and council discussion, all is in that. And then the other kind of bigger items, the council considered two ordinances on cannabis. One was a ordinance regulating the use of cannabis in public spaces, held the public hearing on that, but then they did table that ordinance until October, as that ordinance was pretty much the same as the ordinance that the county considered today, but because they wanted to wait till the county board wasn't considering it until today, they tabled it just to ensure that if the county significantly changed theirs, the council wanted to be able to consider any changes the county made as well. So county adopted theirs without any changes today. So we'll now go back to the council on October 2nd for approval. The other ordinance related to cannabis was a moratorium on the retail sale and licensure for cannabis-related products. So what that pretty much said is with the legislation that legalized cannabis in Minnesota, one of the things it did was create an Office of Cannabis Management to license essentially the retail sale, so dispensaries. That office is brand new, so it's currently in creation. They have to staff it, create it. There's a lot of rulemaking that they have to do. While they don't anticipate that they'll start issuing licenses until early 2025, the statute pretty much says as soon as they're ready, they can start issuing licenses. It does allow cities to place a moratorium through December 31, 2024, which I think most cities in Crow Wing County have done at this point. So the council did that. Just gives them time to kind of watch and see what does the Office of Cannabis Management do, and then kind of make their own rulemaking, especially when it comes to licensing, specifically how many licenses. The city is required to have a minimum of one, but we can have more. How many licenses do we want to have? Probably have the Planning Commission will probably be involved in that discussion as well when we talked about zoning, where they should be located and things like that. So that was enacted, and those were pretty much kind of the main items from the agenda.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, moving on to new business. So the first thing we have is a public hearing for variance application V23005 for James and Susan Sackrider of 32601 Point, Lot 31, Trottercade, parcel 13538. Request to expand legal nonconforming use, dwelling proposed 8 feet by 32 feet, addition to the dwelling. Proposed addition is 24 feet from the OHW, it is in a zone R2. So we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing, and we will allow for the applicant to approach the podium, state their name and address, and presentation.
Hey, good evening. Mark Severson with Severson Porter Law, local real estate attorney, helping out the SAC writers in their variance application. I don't know how, if you prefer you to present first on it or just me?
Yeah, first.
Okay, thank you. So in looking at the variance application, the critical document is the survey. I believe that is now in your packets or before you. In that survey, you can see a lot of the issues involved with the lot. And we'll get into the factors that justify granting of a variance that you're all familiar with. How much of this is the property owner's fault, his own plight? Did he create these circumstances? Or does the lot have some unique characteristics or features about it that would make granting a variance reasonable? It doesn't make sense. There is the reasonable test. What makes sense as just from a common sense perspective, and then also the legal factors. I'll touch on those. I won't do a deep dive and kill your evening, but I'm looking, when I took this application and reviewed what was needed, I looked at it from the perspective of doing this as an attorney, but also past experiences in your shoes as a planning and zoning member for Crosby, and then also a city councilor. You don't always have easy decisions. From that perspective, from my experiences, this is pretty easy. I've had a lot of variances come before me or represent clients where they're not really reasonable. They're shooting for the moon, and they're doing that maybe strategically, thinking we'll scale it back. They'll say, well, we're going for a variance, maybe we'll just get closer, a little bit closer to the lake, or a little bit closer to the neighbor. We can go as close as 10 feet to the neighbor. Why don't we push it that far? In this case, you don't have that. The survey shows the proposed addition. It's essentially an 8-foot bump out. So even putting aside all the legal factors and what is going to go through your minds, that in and of itself is reasonable. It's an 8-foot bump out. The other smell test factor that I would propose is, who cares? Is there a public outcry? That's not per se a legal factor, but in talking with the neighbors and the community, they don't care. And the reason they wouldn't care is many of the homes are the same. They have the same characteristics, the same features. And I don't have the data tonight because I don't think it's really needed, but if you go down the lake, there's a lot of similar structures where you could look at the history. If a permit was pulled, maybe if a variance was never requested, how many people just did it? It's an 8-foot bump out. I'll find a contractor who will just do it. There's a lot of that. And at first, our first initial look, it does look like there's a lot of that as well on Lake Assawinamaki. So then you go to the legal factors. Ultimately, you get to this phrase, practical difficulties. What's the practical difficulty? And the courts are kind enough to define that for us in really almost the same terms that I've discussed. Is it reasonable? Is the proposed use reasonable? And I simply submit that an 8-foot bump out is supremely reasonable. It's not going to interfere with any of the neighbors. It's not going to dramatically change the view from the shoreline, the runoff to the shoreline. It's not going to harm the lake. Then the second factor is, if the circumstances of the property are such that there aren't really other options, is the way I would phrase it. As a board member, you might look at that and be like, well, gee, I don't know, maybe maybe you could put it over here, or you could tuck it in there. And if you look at the survey, there's a lot going on with what's already there. There's a shared driveway that has to be in that location. You can see retaining wall. If you're not familiar with the site and haven't driven down there, that retaining wall is there for a reason, because there's a slope and it goes down to the point of Timber Lane Point. So there's really not, in talking with Paul Herkenhoff, who did the survey, I always ask those questions. Well, is there any other way to do this that would be more reasonable? Because we're going to have basically one bite at the apple. We want to get it right. And he pretty emphatically said, this is what you see is what you get. And that goes into the factor of, well, impervious surface, is that going to be an issue? You guys know the standard, it's 25%. This is essentially the grandfather property, platted in the 60s. It's already at 31% impervious surface. Now, when you grant a variance, you can expand a previous non-conforming use. You're allowed to do that. And the impervious surface added by this 8-foot bump out is not a lot. Jerry knows the exact percentage, but it's less than 2%. So when you factor in what are the alternatives, what could be done, is it reasonable? Is he asking for the least that he could be asking for, essentially? And I'm proposing to you that he is. And then finally, what does this do to the neighborhood? If you go down the road and compare what we want this property to look like with the 8-foot bump out, does this dramatically alter the essential character of the neighborhood? And I think you guys know it does not. There's many homes along that stretch that are much larger. So I hope that you strongly consider those points and ultimately grant this variance. You're asked a lot of, you're given a lot of opportunities for no to variances. There's a lot of applications before you that really aren't that reasonable. This one is reasonable. So thank you for your time.
Does anyone have questions before you return? Any questions?
So on this addition, if I read it right, there's going to be another bathroom?
I don't have the exact blueprints on that, but
Well, my question was, if there's a second bathroom, is the septic going to?
conforming.
Yeah. Will it?
And in granting the variance, you could make that a condition, make sure that all septic is in conformance with the ordinance.
And I guess the concern would be, if it were me and you had to put a mound system in and then you're got a whole nother beast to deal with there. It's kind of a concern.
Yeah, that didn't come up as a reason it wouldn't work. I spoke about that briefly with Paul. My understanding is there wouldn't be the need for expansion of any of the septic area that would support what's being proposed. But that being said, if you wanted to add that as a condition and it in effect turns into a denial, that's reasonable. You have to, anytime you do new work on a home, you got to have your septic in compliance.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I did a drive-by, but I don't know if there's just holding tanks there. If there is a drain field, it's showing. Well, it almost looks like a main. Well, maybe 5 tanks there. If that's what the S means.
Right.
So maybe the last 3 is the the treatment bed.
Yeah,
The
I
first
don't
2
have,
tanks. I don't know.
I don't have all the details on the exact septic system. I could pull that information, but when you have, what I do know is when you have 5 cleanouts, that's probably a pretty substantial system.
I'm assuming that the first one is gonna be your solids, and then the second one would be your lift tank, and then, you know, going into the drain field itself where the 3 S's are. I mean, I'm not positive, but that's kinda how they lay them out, but that would be a concern, I guess. And then also too, this concrete area, was that a shared driveway? Or would that be on the southwest end of the house?
I don't see where you're
Put
pointing.
on the, further over the other way, this is right here.
The concrete.
Yeah. Was that a shared driveway there?
That pad is not,
Okay.
the bituminous below it is,
Okay.
yes.
Do you know what other alternatives were explored? Was there, a second story would certainly add
Yeah.
space without,
Where's the septic compliance for Sac Rider?
Probably in the property file, my
yeah, that makes sense. Was the second story considered? Because that would be able to add space without dealing with increasing the impervious coverage. Because one of the
Got the
questions or
variance file,
concerns
but-
is normally impervious would be about 25% of lots. This puts us at 30%, which is a fairly
there's another
significant,
one.
overall
One that just
increase. Do you know if they considered a second story?
3-2,
First on the impervious, I would say if you're granting, cap it at whatever the number is, it's 32 and a fraction. You could even just cap it at 33. But my understanding is it's not purely economical, but it'd be,
I think I got what I need.
the architecture of the structure doesn't support going on another floor.
I think I
And
got
of
it
course,
right.
that also means economic disaster, trying to make it structurally sound for another addition.
Okay. And then what is the practical difficulty currently that they have with the current home? What is the need for adding this space that makes it a difficulty to currently live in the home and operate?
Well, you might be seeing this more and more with Breezy Point. And I think it's a good thing, gradually going from more of your seasonal cabins to what can support a year-round home. So whether it's this property owner or the future ones, an addition like this makes it more of a year-round home and supports a family. You could have more people in this home. It's not just basically I don't want to call it a shack, but a small space to be there in the summer.
So is that adding, I thought it was expanding the bedrooms. Is it actually adding more bedrooms?
It's adding square footage to the home.
I guess I'm questioning now if it's adding more people to there, then is the septic an issue? Because usually that's set by bath or bedrooms. And if it's
No, that's why I said whether it's this owner or future owners, there's not like an increase in people. It's just an 8-foot bump out, increase in the size of the structure to maximize how livable it is.
Okay.
Could they not do what they want to do without that extra 256 square feet? Or what, if they're just increasing the size of the building to increase the size of the building? Right, so why,
What's the
not
need?
adding bedrooms, it's not a bathroom. What are they, what's the purpose of the bump out? Especially at 8 feet wide only, which seems odd to me. Because that is, a legal bedroom's 70 square feet, so they're obviously not really adding a bedroom unless they're splitting that in half. So I'm just trying to go through what the purpose is, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know if I have the full deep dive answer there, other than the desire to not be so confined in such a tiny space. I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't like that amount of square footage removed from your house. It's every little amount of space to make it livable helps.
You could always remove the structure and build a new one.
What's that?
Remove the structure and build a new one. In the same footprint. That
Well-
can support a second story.
Well, not in
Gaining your
the,
space.
not in the proposed manner,
Correct.
but yeah.
Any other questions at this time?
I guess kind of getting back to that concrete area, is it possible that some of that could be removed to give them a little more leeway? You know, let's see, it kind of goes down and wraps around the house, and, you know, maybe there can adjustments be made there that would, you know.
Do we know how much square footage that is? I'm not sure if that's on anything.
Concrete total
there
is
you go.
1,079.
It's right here, okay.
So 3% plus.
And I'm assuming they, you know, they're using it for a driveway.
There's almost 1,100 square feet of concrete
Okay,
on that piece of property.
that's a fair amount.
Administrator Chansky, can you go to like the house diagram page for 1 second? Page 14, I think. Well, I guess I don't know. Oh yeah, there it is. Well, it's pretty grainy still. Yeah. Because I'm assuming that this is what the 8 feet
Yeah.
are adding in more of a bedroom and then a bath and
But that looks like it would add another bedroom because there's already 2. So now we're questioning septic.
compliance. But even if we grant it, they have to pass it, so.
It looks like the septic system certificate of install was as recently as 2020. So that would suggest to me a good-sized new system. Any
Should we-
septic people? 2250 Trumbull Sather. Does that mean anything to you?
So it was new in 2020 then?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm seeing from this.
Okay. You would think, but you shouldn't go off of that, but when they would install something new like that, you would think they would maybe think a little bit of the future, but I don't know that for sure.
Well, my understanding is the septic that's there supports what they're proposing.
Shall we move on to Jerry's and reserve the right to call him back for more questions?
That's fine.
All right, we may have more questions for you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, moving on to staff review. Jerry, would you please lead us?
Okay, again, the variance request is 2023-005. Applicants are James and Susan Sackrider. Legal descriptions is Lot 31 and a portion of vacated Timberline Point of Trotter Cade. The address is 32601 Timberline Point. The zoning is residential 2, R2. The applicable codes is 153.007, 153.032, 153.044, 153.045, and 153.120. The request is to expand a legal non-conforming use with an 8 by 32 addition to the dwelling unit, 24 feet from the OHW. The property is located on Timberline Point, the vacated portion of Timberline Point, Access to the property is from a shared driveway on the adjacent property, 32635 Timberline Point. The property is, and adjacent properties to the east is a narrow peninsula in Lake Osawatomie. The property currently hosts a dwelling, 2 outbuildings, driveway, miscellaneous concrete ground cover. The existing dwelling is located within the 75-foot setback, and the northeast corner of the dwelling is 25 feet from the OHW. Because the dwelling is located within 75 feet setback from the OHW, the dwelling is considered a legal non-conforming use. The applicant is seeking a variance to expand the existing dwelling with an addition of 8 feet by 32 feet on the east wall of the dwelling. The northeast corner of the proposed addition, again, 24 feet from the OHW. The existing pervious coverage of the original Lot 31 is 31.24%. Variance is a legally permitted deviation is provided by MS 462.357 subdivision 6 as it may be amended from time to time from the provisions of this chapter as deemed necessary by the Board of Adjustment when the strict interpretation of the ordinance would create practical difficulty and be impractical because of circumstances relating to lot size, shape, topography, or other characteristics of the property, and when the deviation from the ordinance with then attached conditions will still be in keeping with the spirit and the intent of the ordinance. Variances cannot create a land use not permitted in the zone. Variances shall be decided within a reasonable time with consideration for the following. The strict interpretation of the ordinance would be impractical because of circumstances relating to lot size, shape, topography, or other characteristics of the property not created by the landowner. The deviation from the ordinance with any attached conditions will still be in keeping with the spirit and the intent of the ordinance. The land use created by the variance is permitted in the zoning district where the property is located. The variance will not alter the essential character of the locality, and the variance is not for economic reasons alone, but reasonable use of the property does not exist under the ordinance. The applicant contends that the practical difficulty is, and that is blank in my report because that is the responsibility of the applicant to provide that. The property is part of a 1961 plat. The use is consistent with the character of surrounding neighborhood, and the impervious coverage is proposed to be 32.44%. The following finding of fact may be used to support denial of the variance request. The property pre-exists subdivision and zoning regulations. The impervious coverage does exceed 25%. The proposed expansion does encroach on the OHW more than the existing dwelling, and the proposed impervious coverage is 32.44%. The following may be used to support approval of the variance request. The subdivision was created prior to zoning and subdivision regulations. The request is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the official controls, consistent with the comprehensive plan. The property owner is proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner, and the plight of the owner is due to circumstances unique to the property not created by the owner. The variance if granted will not alter the essential character of the locality, and again, the practical difficulty is undefined at this time. If approved, the following may be conditions of the approval. Minimum elevation of the lowest floor, 1210 or greater. Maximum impervious coverage, I think that is blank because I think that's something that could be addressed. And develop a surface water retention and management plan, and anything other that the board would so desire. Board may by resolution choose to approve, deny, or modify the request variance. The resolution shall clearly state the practical difficulty and the reasons for approval, denial, or modifications of the variance. Just an aside, you did ask about, in Mr. Severson's presentation, you did ask about the septic. The septic has a current compliance. It's showing a septic, the survey that I passed out is showing a septic area that's adjacent to the house. The drain field is actually located up to the south in that triangular area south of Timberline Point. When I first got this application, I started reviewing the survey and looked at the second edition of or the third actually, survey that I got, showed what the impervious coverage was, and then I looked at the whole property, and I looked at the fact that Timberline Point was part of the original property, or the vacated portion of Timberline Point was part of that property. The property owners received that as part of the vacation. When I looked at that, it was all, well, the majority of it, about 40% of it was impervious coverage. And I really didn't think that would be fair to the applicant to include that. So I asked the surveyor to provide me updated impervious coverage calculations based on the original lot only. And that original lot on that survey that I passed out is the dotted line, which would be north of Timberline Point. That is what I've been using in my report to talk about impervious coverage. Again, I didn't think it would be fair to include the Timberline Point or the south of Timberline Point in that, because it was something that was servicing all people, and it was part of the vacation.
Jerry, or Madam Chairman, Jerry, is the applicant aware of the letter from the DNR?
We sent a copy of the letter of the whole packet to the applicant. That letter was included.
Okay.
As general practice, we try to supply the applicant with everything that's going to be in front of you.
So Jerry, with the impervious coverage calculations on this new survey, it says 35.56.
The accurate impervious coverage on that original lot is a blank piece of paper that just shows the impervious coverage that was part of your packet.
Gotcha.
There's approximately 1,550 square feet of impervious coverage above the 25%.
Hey, Jerry, how much of that, if a guy got rid of some of that concrete, how much would a guy have to take out of there to make it?
Well, there's approximately, there's 1,079 square feet of concrete on that site today.
I wonder if that would include that retaining wall, I wonder, you think?
I do not believe the retaining wall is part of that. I believe that is the concrete sidewalks that are there, and there's a concrete patio to the west.
That's not a garage.
Pardon?
Is it a garage or no?
And there's some garages or sheds, but they're
There is no garage attached.
No.
So
It's a
essentially,
house, a shed, and an attached, detached garage that's approximately 22 by 15.
Got it.
so if they did remove the concrete, it's about 5%, it would get them closer to the 25% coverage.
But they'd have to remove all of it. They'd have to remove all of it, is that what you're saying?
Madam Chairman?
Yeah.
Jerry, do you know why the bituminous expands on the left side of the property there?
I'm assuming it expands to provide an entrance to that shed. Is that what we're speaking about?
Actually, what I'm looking at is the expansion of the bituminous toward the lake on that left side.
On the left side?
Then it crosses the property line.
Right.
What was that with the neighbor? I wonder.
Don't know. Oh, that I do not know.
Okay. It narrows
I
again.
believe it's also serving another property.
Yeah, it narrows again on the other side of the property, which I assume is used by the neighbor.
So you probably just have a little sliver of it right there, the way it looks. A lot of line.
The reason I ask is if that is not a necessary portion of the driveway, if that could be eliminated and if that would improve the impervious problem.
Go ahead and approach.
My only concern there is anytime you mess with runoff, your water's going to go somewhere else. And we're also messing with what is a shared driveway. I frankly don't know if there's a shared driveway agreement, or I'd have to look at more title records, but then we're getting into something that could impact the neighbor. Even removing the concrete, how does that affect the water flow? So I would honestly, if that's a concern of yours, you could grant, but you could add a condition of, hey, we will let you have this, but we need to have a stormwater runoff plan. That wouldn't be unreasonable. Because that's ultimately, as planners and why we have all these ordinances, that's why we're concerned about impervious surface. What's it going to do with water flow? Is it going to create problems with runoff to the lake, to the neighbors? We can answer that question by just requiring the applicant to come up with a stormwater plan and make the approval subject to that. Yeah, and the removing concrete too, I would have concerns about what exactly does that do for mostly to the water flow to the lake. And then on that point, I just want to touch very briefly on the DNR letter. Yes, we are aware of that. There is a little bit of a history that I almost prefer not to get into it. The DNR hasn't exactly been friendly to Lake Osseo over the years, basically declaring the lake dead. And we've worked hand in hand with the Lake Improvement District, doing a number of things to bring that lake to health, and it's thriving. It's basically the poster child for what a Lake Improvement District can do for a lake. So I don't want to condescend or be disrespectful of what was submitted. I think it was more from the perspective of a land use office than a DNR office, but that's my 2 cents.
Jerry, on the letter, it says that there could end up being a new variance because of the closeness of the septic tank to this addition. Do you have any comments on that or any insight if that would be the case?
I guess I don't think I'm qualified to comment on that, quite frankly. And just from response to Mr. Severson, one of the things I did cite, if in fact there was an approval, that there should be a stormwater management plan. And it's very apparent that there wasn't a stormwater management plan on when most of this stuff was done. The other thing I should point out is that there are options to make impervious coverages pervious. It is more expensive than the traditional means, but it is something that is accepted, something that we have done before. And we actually count assume the concrete was taken out and replaced with pervious materials with the proper underground construction to make it pervious, it wouldn't count against the impervious coverage. So we haven't seen any of those proposals in this application at this time, and but there are options to do that type of thing.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Jerry. So you threw out Timber Point Lane and the South Bay Lane
I did.
as part of their impervious.
The pervious that I'm speaking about in my report is totally the original lot.
Okay.
Not even looking at the portion of the south of the original lot.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that before I ask my question or make a statement. Since those were thrown out, and this bituminous essentially past the shed serves the lot next door, can we throw that out and that will probably get them down to their impervious? Because essentially if that house next door wasn't there, they wouldn't need all that bituminous past the shed.
I don't know that you can do that, quite frankly, because I think you're affecting a neighbor.
I'm not saying get rid of it all. I'm saying, so just like you got rid of Timber Point Lane and South Bay Lane in coming up with your number, if we draw an arbitrary line in here and discount what's beyond, because essentially they don't need it and it's only serving the lot next to them.
I don't know that I can do that, quite
Okay.
frankly.
I was just posing a question.
I don't know that I want to arbitrarily do that, quite frankly. I think I'd have to have some reason to do it.
They don't use it.
And
It doesn't serve
just-
that lot. That's what I would say. It doesn't serve me.
It does serve that lot, though.
In what aspect?
It provides access to the shed. It also provides access to the bottom side of the property. Now, that certainly could be changed to pervious material. I think that might be a better option than just saying, we'll take it out of the equation.
Like crushed granite or rock or
Typically, it
pervious
is,
pavers or?
typically it's pavers in the subsurface. There's
Foot.
about 12 to 14 inches of subsurface work with granular materials that make that pervious.
And on that other shed it's 120 square feet, I notice, I don't know if that's the street coming in, then it kind of wraps in front of that shed. It kind of like that whole area where that shed in front of it's all tarred, you know, right in,
All this?
right here. See, this is all tarred. What if,
Just keep a drive lane in
keep
there?
a driveway in, you know what I mean? It's just a thought.
I do think there's some opportunities here to improve upon it, to be able to make this more conducive to the current ordinance.
So is our concern the impervious or how close they are to the water? Or both?
I would say both.
So what do we think about them being 24 feet from the OHW?
I don't know that they can change that other than building up. That would be the question there is. And I think this kind of goes back to that original thought of what's the practical difficulty? As you were asking, what's the use for this? It's not a ton of extra space, but what are they doing with that? That their current structure makes it unusable or a practical difficulty that they need to do this for the home. Because I could also argue that if they've overgrown the home, buying a different home, not that that's always the option, but if we overgrow a home, building something different or going to someplace else versus trying to build onto a lot that isn't meant to be in the current condition ordinance. But with that being said, I do think, I mean, there's opportunities here with that concrete to remove that and get it to make up for that. So, but before we get into our discussion, is there any other questions for Jerry or the applicant?
No.
All right. Then let's close the public hearing portion and move on to our discussion here. Where am I at my line notes? So do we have more discussion here? First of all, do we have any motions?
No motion from me.
So let's talk through this a little bit. So the kind of the biggest issues that we have to discuss and decide on is, one, what is a practical difficulty? And then secondly, how do we address the fact that it doesn't meet the ordinance? Are there things that we can do that would make this closer to meeting it or improve upon the condition? So just kind of, what does everyone think the practical difficulty is based on our discussion? Did we answer that question?
I think we still have, I guess, it's already a non-conforming lot, so that makes it a practical difficulty in my mind to begin with, because you can't really do anything, because it's always going to be out of ordinance. And if that's the case, the variance, right in the definition, is impractical because of circumstances relating to lot size, shape, topography, and other characteristics of the property. And another characteristic of the property would be that it's non-conforming. That's how I'm interpreting it.
And to, Madam Chair, and to add to what you're saying, Teddy, is this an opportunity to make a non-conforming property better?
Right. And I think,
Like with the water plan?
and that's a fair statement too, but I can see here they're already not even built in their building envelope, because the 75 foot from the water line, they're already way too close to begin with.
Yeah, I'm real concerned with where is all of that water that's running off all of that bituminous and concrete going?
So what if we did say, okay, part of this is we want to, before we add on to the problem or the potential problem, that we want to correct some of that. Do we feel that making that concrete area would be an option to change it from impervious to pervious? And then having a stormwater plan?
I think there has to be a stormwater plan regardless
Yeah.
of what we do.
I would agree.
I agree.
Madam Chair? Thinking maybe out of the box a little bit, but I think the applicant is aware of your concern about the impervious coverage and the stormwater. Maybe you could put the onus on the applicant to provide a plan as far as how to mitigate some of that impervious coverage
Okay.
and how to take care of the stormwater.
I like that idea.
What? Yeah, I know.
So in that case, would we be making a motion to deny their request to then ask them to come back with a plan on how to reduce impervious coverage in a stormwater plan?
I think that would be a direction that's an option to you, to table the application until they provide a mitigation plan, per se.
Couldn't we approve it with condition that they do it?
I'm afraid that if we do something like that without knowing the full implications of what it's going to do to
Okay.
the neighbors, that we may be making a mistake by doing that.
Okay.
I think it probably behooves the applicant to to get an engineer over there and figure out how to deal with the stormwater. Oh, we can,
Well, we certainly don't want to deny the table, and if tabling it and doing that extra due diligence moves the needle, then of course we'll do what we have to do.
there's a 60-day requirement. That 60-day requirement would run out on the 10th, which would be the next meeting date. I think there's an extension that we can ask for up to 30 days.
We can waive that.
Yes.
Then I would make a motion at this time to table this for a stormwater plan, more discussion on, just to come back with a stormwater plan, practical difficulty answer, just to confirm, and then a plan for impervious coverage reduction.
I would second that motion.
We have a second. Do we have all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion has passed. All right, any old business? And staff reports, any new staff reports? Commission member reports? Any? All right, we can adjourn, thank you.